The morning after my wife's funeral, I stood in the kitchen at 6 in the morning and I could not find the coffee filters. 54 years of marriage. I did not know where she kept the coffee filters because she had always made the coffee and I had always been somewhere else when it happened. I drove to a gas station and bought coffee in a paper cup and sat in a parking lot. My son sent me a home video from Christmas 1987. I appear in 12 seconds of it. I am standing in the doorway, watching the room, not in it. I watched those 12 seconds 14 times, trying to remember what I had been thinking. And I want to tell you, because you are standing in that same doorway right now. The morning after Margaret's funeral, I stood in the kitchen at 6 in the morning in the suit I had not changed out of, and I could not find the coffee filters. 54 years. I lived in that kitchen for 54 years, and I did not know where she kept the coffee filters because she'd always made the coffee and I'd always been somewhere else when it happened. At the table with the newspaper, or already at my desk, or simply in a different part of the room, in a way that added up over 54 years to a different part of her life. I stood at the open cabinet for a long time. Then I put on my coat and drove to the gas station on Maple and bought coffee in a paper cup and sat in the parking lot and drank it, and thought about every morning of my marriage that I had walked past. That was November 2022. I am 88 years old, and I want to tell you something that I could not have told you at 60 or 70 or even 80, because at those ages I still believed that the life I had built was the life I had intended, and the distance between those two things had not yet become fully visible. It is visible now. I was a corporate accountant for 37 years, good at it, genuinely good, not in the way that people say they're good at things when they mean they got by, but in the way that means you understood the structure of the thing and could hold the whole of it in your mind and move through it without losing the thread. Numbers made sense to me in a way that other things did not. They were exact. They balanced or they didn't. The ledger told you precisely where you stood. I applied this logic to my life. That was the first mistake, and it was the mistake from which all the others descended. I married Margaret in 1968. She was a teacher, 3rd grade, 22 years at the same school. The kind of woman who remembered every student she'd ever had and could tell you exactly where each of them was now and what they were doing. She was warm in a way that I found, honestly, slightly excessive for many years, and then, near the end, understood to be the single most valuable quality a person can have, which is the capacity to be genuinely interested in other people without needing a reason. We bought the house in Cincinnati in 1972. 2 sons, good school district. I provided everything a man was supposed to provide in 1972, and in 1982, and in 1992, and in 2002, in the way that a man who grew up being told that provision was the primary form of love provides it, completely, without question, and as a substitute for the other forms that I did not know how to supply. The house was orderly. The finances were orderly. The boys went to college and became competent men and built orderly lives of their own, which I take partial credit for, and which I also understand now was not entirely the blessing I thought it was. The seed was not dramatic. I want to be very clear about this, because I think people expect the moment that changed everything to be large and identifiable, and it was not. It was a Saturday morning in the 1990s. I could not tell you the exact year, when Margaret was in the garden and I could see her through the kitchen window doing something with the roses, the way she did on Saturday mornings in the good weather. And she looked up and saw me watching through the glass, and she smiled and raised a hand. I raised a hand back. I did not go outside. I turned back to the newspaper. She went back to the roses. An ordinary Saturday morning, one of hundreds exactly like it, in both directions. Hundreds before it, hundreds after. I did not think about it at the time. I did not register it as a choice. It was simply what happened. She was there, I was here. We acknowledged each other. We continued. That is the seed. Not cruelty, not neglect. A man at a kitchen window who raised his hand and turned back to the newspaper, because going outside would have required putting down the newspaper and going outside. And the newspaper was already in his hands. I have thought about that Saturday morning more than I have thought about almost anything else in the past 18 months. I would give everything I have left, the house, the savings, the orderly finances, all of it, for one of those Saturday mornings back. Paul Ashworth married my wife's sister in 1974, and I have known him for 50 years and never once understood him until very recently. Paul was, by the numbers I understood, less successful than me. Smaller house, more modest career. He drove the same car for 11 years because he said it still ran fine and he couldn't justify the expense, which was the kind of reasoning that seemed to me like a failure to take your own situation seriously. He coached his son's baseball teams for 8 years, even when the seasons were long and the travel was inconvenient. He cried at his daughter's wedding in a way that I remember thinking was more than the occasion called for. He did not manage his life, he lived in it. This seemed, from where I was standing for most of those 50 years, like a lack of discipline. I thought what Paul had was a pleasant life with soft edges, and what I had was a correct one. I thought the difference was that I was serious and he was not. The difference was that he went outside on Saturday mornings. My son David found a home video from Christmas 1987 and had it digitized and sent it to me 2 years ago. I don't know why he sent it without comment. I don't know if it was meant as a gift or something else, something he couldn't say directly. I watched it on my laptop at the kitchen table. It was 40 minutes of that Christmas morning. The boys opening presents, Margaret laughing at something I couldn't hear, the dog we had then running through the frame, a living room that was warm and loud and full of the specific chaos of a family in the middle of its own life. I appear in 12 seconds of it. I am standing in the doorway to the kitchen, watching. Not in the room, in the doorway, holding a cup of coffee, watching the room happen, the way a man watches something through a window. I watched those 12 seconds 14 times. I was trying to remember what I had been thinking in that doorway, what I was waiting for before I went in, whether I was going in and just hadn't yet, or whether I was going to stay in the doorway for the rest of the morning, the way I apparently did, because those are the only 12 seconds I appear in 40 minutes of Christmas 1987. I cannot remember what I was thinking. I cannot remember the morning at all. What I can see, watching it now, is a man who treated his own family like a room he was about to enter, and never did. The fact of my marriage is this: I was present in the building for 54 years, and absent from the room for most of them. The interior was a set of justifications, so well practiced they had stopped feeling like justifications and started feeling like facts. I was tired. I was providing. I was not built for the kind of open, unguarded emotional conversation that Margaret occasionally asked for. And asking me to be built for it was asking me to be someone I was not. And I was not going to pretend to be someone I was not. This last one I was particularly proud of. I called it honesty. I called it integrity. It was neither of those things. It was a man who had decided that the discomfort of being seen was more than he was willing to sustain, and had dressed that decision in the language of authenticity. The detail I cannot shake, the sound of Margaret at the kitchen table on Sunday evenings, going through her students' papers, a specific sound, her pen on the paper, the occasional soft exhale of someone who has found something worth noting. I heard that sound for 30 years from the other room. I can hear it now, exactly. In a way, I cannot hear her voice anymore. The voice has started to soften at the edges. The sound of the pen on paper is still completely precise. I did not go sit with her on those Sunday evenings. I had things to do, things that are finished now and that I cannot remember and that no longer matter in any way that I can identify. Here is the domino in the order it happened. I chose competence over presence for 30 years, and what I produced was two sons who learned that the way a man loves is by being reliable and providing and not requiring anything emotional in return. They are good men. They are reliable. They do not require anything emotional in return. I look at them and I see myself at 40, and I understand now that this is not a compliment to any of us. I chose distance over vulnerability for 30 years, and what I produced in Margaret was a woman who stopped trying to reach me sometime in the 1990s, not dramatically, not with a conversation or a decision, but simply by redirecting her energy toward the things that received it, which were her students, and her garden, and her sister, and her friends. And I told myself this was fine. This was her having a full life. This was healthy independence. And I believed that until she got sick, and I realized that I did not know how to be close to her because I had never practiced it. And practicing it while she was dying was the hardest thing I have ever done. And I was not good at it. And I ran out of time before I got better. I chose a newspaper over the garden on hundreds of Saturday mornings, and what I produced was a marriage that was real and long and in many ways good, and that left me, at the end of it, standing at a kitchen cabinet at 6 in the morning, not knowing where the coffee filters were. The cost I did not anticipate. The one that was invisible while I was accumulating it was the cost to my own interior. I thought I was protecting something by keeping people at a managed distance. What I was doing was practicing the skill of distance until I had become very good at it and very bad at the alternative. By the time I understood that I wanted to be close to people, to Margaret, to my sons, to anyone, I had spent 50 years making it harder. You cannot get good at something you do not practice. I practiced distance. I became excellent at it. The excellence cost me the thing I would have chosen if I had understood what I was choosing. Paul's wife is alive. He sits in the kitchen with her on Sunday evenings, and I know this because his daughter mentioned it once, just in passing. The way you mention something that is so ordinary, it requires no comment. They sit in the kitchen, they talk, or they don't talk. They are in the same room, and the room is enough. Paul's children call on Tuesdays, not because something happened, because Tuesday is when they call. His grandchildren run toward him when he walks in, which is the detail that I come back to most often, because it means something specific. It means those children have spent enough time inside his actual presence to have formed an attachment to it. My grandchildren are polite to me. They look at me the way children look at someone they have been told to respect. I am not complaining about this. I built it. Polite is what you get when the alternative, something warmer, something more specific, something that requires the other person to have actually shown up, was not offered. In the spring of 2023, I went to my grandson's baseball game. First one I'd ever attended. I sat in the bleachers with no newspaper, no phone, nothing, just the game and the afternoon. Between innings, the boy looked into the stands and found me there. The expression on his face was surprise. That is the image I will carry. An 11-year-old boy, surprised to find his grandfather watching him play. I am 88 years old, and I am done with the language of wisdom. Wisdom is what you call something when you want it to sound earned rather than painful. What I have is not wisdom. What I have is the complete ledger. Every entry, every column, every place where the numbers don't balance. And I am going to tell you what's in it, because you are going to make the same mistakes I made unless someone tells you plainly what they are. And most people who know what they are won't say so plainly, because they are still inside the life they built. And plain speech would require them to look at it directly. I am not inside anything anymore. I am looking at the finished thing. I can afford to be plain. Here are the mistakes, not all of them. A life of 88 years has more errors than can be listed in any single accounting. But the ones that cost the most, the ones I see you making right now, you are choosing to be reliable instead of present. You are showing up to the building and calling it showing up. You are providing the things that can be measured, the money, the logistics, the competent management of the practical world, and treating them as a complete accounting of what a person owes the people they love. They are not. They are the floor. The floor is not the house. You are choosing comfort over the conversation. There is something you have not said to someone you love, something true, something that would require you to be seen saying it, something that would make you feel exposed in a way that your life has not asked you to feel very often, because you have organized it carefully to avoid that feeling. You are going to keep not saying it. You are going to not say it for another year, and then another. And one day the person you were going to say it to will not be available for the saying. And you will stand in a kitchen not knowing where the coffee filters are. And you will understand exactly what the silence cost. You are watching from doorways. You are in the frame for 12 seconds of the 40-minute life. You are standing at the kitchen window, raising your hand and turning back to the newspaper, and you are doing it so automatically that it doesn't feel like a choice. And I am telling you from the other side of 50 years of that choice, it is a choice. It is always a choice. The newspaper is always going to be there. The Saturday morning is not. I went to my grandson's baseball game last spring, and I sat in the bleachers with nothing in my hands, and I watched. The boy looked into the stands between innings, and he found me there, and his face showed surprise. And I understood in that moment what I had not understood for 87 years, that the most valuable thing I could offer anyone was simply to be there, fully, without the newspaper, without the managed distance, without the part of my mind already somewhere else. It took me 87 years to go to the game. He has 3 more seasons before high school. I am going to every one of them. Not because it fixes anything. It doesn't fix anything. The ledger is what it is. The columns are what they are. But because the one thing I can still choose is whether I am in the room or in the doorway. And I am choosing the room. And I am choosing it too late, and also not too late, because he is 11 and I am 88. And there is still time for him to be surprised to see me, and then, eventually, for the surprise to go away. That is what I am working toward, the absence of surprise, the presence that is so consistent it stops being remarkable. I am not going to tell you that you have time. You might. I don't know your age or your situation, or how many Saturday mornings you have left in front of that kitchen window. What I can tell you is this. The person in your life who looks up from the garden and smiles and raises a hand is telling you something. They are telling you that they are there, and that they see you, and that the door is open. Go outside, not after the newspaper, not when you have a better moment, not when you've finished what you're doing. The coffee filters will be wherever she kept them. The newspaper will still be there when you come back. Go outside now, while she is still in the garden. Tell me in the comments, is there someone in your life you've been watching from a doorway? Because I know exactly what that cost, and I need you to know it before you finish paying it.